Welcome everyone to the 2024 grants webinar for the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority. We will be covering the grant round as well as the community grants program. And I will start off the presentation and then hand it off. I'm Jessica Davenport, Program Manager for the Authority, and I'll hand it off to Sarah Haugen, the Grant Program Coordinator for the Authority, about halfway through. Great, so let's get started. So what is the San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority? It's a regional agency created to fund shoreline projects that will protect, restore, and enhance San Francisco Bay. The funding is generated by Measure AA, which passed in June of 2016. It generates funds to accomplish the authority's mission. And the jurisdiction is the shoreline of the 9 counties in the San Francisco Bay Area, excluding the Delta Primary Zone. So the Restoration Authority Act sets out our funding requirements. The authority can fund habitat projects that will restore, protect, or enhance tidal wetlands, manage ponds or natural habitats along the shoreline, flood management features that are part of a habitat project, and public access or recreational amenities that are part of a habitat project. We have a wide range of eligible grantees, including federal, state, and local agencies, tribal governments, nonprofit organizations, and owners and operators of shoreline parcels. And as I mentioned, the 9 Bay Area counties are eligible along the shoreline of the main San Francisco Bay, San Pablo Bay, Carquinez Strait, Suisun Bay, and most of the northern Contra Costa County shoreline, but not including the Delta Primary Zone. So what do we mean by along the shoreline of San Francisco Bay? This includes subtidal habitats lying below mean low tide within a reasonable distance of the shoreline, the baylands that are between low and high tide, or that would be covered by the tides in the absence of levees or other unnatural structures, and also includes the portions of creeks and rivers located below the head of tide. Projects can also be located in transition zones, the uplands adjacent to potential or actual tidal wetlands that can provide transitional habitat and or marsh migration space, as well as the areas needed to enhance the project's resilience to projected sea level rise. We fund pretty much all project phases, from acquisition to planning, design, permitting, construction, operations, monitoring, evaluation, and maintenance. And it's key to think about how to engage communities early on at any project phase. Partnerships are key to successful projects. So in addition to the Restoration Authority Act describing what's eligible, Measure AA also has eligibility criteria, and it's divided into 4 program areas. The first is safe, clean water and pollution prevention. So the areas that are fundable under this program involve improving water quality by reducing pollution and engaging in restoration activities, reducing pollution through shoreline cleanups and trash removal, also restoring wetlands that they themselves provide natural filters and remove pollution, and restoring creeks where they flow into the bay. The second area has to do with vital fish, bird, and wildlife habitat. So we can fund projects that enhance the National Wildlife Refuge, shoreline parks, and open space preserves, and other public lands, so that they improve habitat for fish, birds, and mammals. We also fund projects that protect and restore wetlands and other shoreline habitats to benefit those various species, and provide funding for stewardship, maintenance, and monitoring of habitat restoration projects to ensure ongoing benefits to wildlife and people. The third area is natural flood protection. So the wetlands themselves can provide flood protection by dampening wave energy. And also projects can include building and improving levees that are a necessary part of wetland restoration activities. The fourth and final area is shoreline public access. So as part of a restoration project, we can fund public access elements that involve constructing new or repairing existing trails and related facilities along the shoreline, and also providing interpretive materials and special outreach events that encourage community engagement. So our regular grant round process has begun for the year through the release of the request for proposals. So now is the time to submit a pre-application, and that will lead to the opportunity to schedule a consultation and get feedback. And we encourage you to do that before late September, as soon as possible. We like to be able to give you feedback so you can have various considerations included in your final application, which needs to be submitted by early October. Then the staff and members of the Restoration Authority's Advisory Committee will review applications in the fall, and staff will recommend projects to the board for funding next year. So the specifics of that period are the RFP was released on July 8th, and the final application is due October 4th. And so we strongly encourage you to request your consultation by September 20th, ideally earlier, and email in your pre-app to grants@sfbayrestore.org. Award dates start in the spring. It all depends on when the project is ready to go to the board. They can be spread out over a few months in 2025, and sometimes longer. There's unexpected delays, but they're really intended to be awarded mostly within 2025. And there is more information on our website.
Yeah, so I'll take over now. Thank you, Jessica. So Jessica just covered the eligibility criteria, and I will be covering the next two areas of criteria we consider when we're reviewing applications. So the first is our prioritization criteria. These are similar to past years, including greatest positive impact, long-term impact, the geographic distribution of the project, how you leverage different funding sources and partnerships, benefiting economically disadvantaged communities, benefiting the region's economy, engaging youth and young adults, incorporating monitoring, maintenance, and stewardship, how the project contributes to landscape scale ecological characteristics, so think those bigger projects, demonstrating a serious effort to engage California Indian tribes in your project, and meeting the selection criteria of the State Coastal Conservancy, San Francisco Bay Conservation and Development Commission, and the San Francisco Bay Joint Venture. And a project is scored based on how well they meet various of these criteria. You're not required to meet every single one to score well, so just keep that in mind. Something we want to note is that this year we have recently adopted equity guidelines and tribal engagement recommendations, which are informing the way our agency operates and our grant programs. So we invite you to review those as you think about your project. And we want to note that in our equity guidelines, we have a call out to make sure our public access projects consider accessibility for those with disabilities. The last section of criteria is the likelihood of success. So we're looking at the applicant's ability and their resources to complete and maintain their proposed project. So we'll look at the applicant's history, how they've formed the budget and schedule for the project, how they're leveraging those resources and partnerships, and how they're planning to maintain and monitor their project after the grant ends. This is also includes the project's level of community involvement and different partnerships. So you can show us that by listing who your partners are and what your communication has been like with them, and providing letters of support from those partners. showing us how the community has been involved so far and how they might benefit from your project, how your project will benefit economically disadvantaged communities, and how you're coordinating with local jurisdictions. And there's much more detail on this in our RFP online, so you can always look at that. So some tips, consider all 3 areas of our criterion to form your application. They're all in the RFP. And as Jessica said, we'll just say it again, definitely reach out to us as soon as you can to with a pre-app so we can discuss your project with you. And the different components of your application will be the cover page, a Word application with your answers to our questions. There's an Excel budget template. You'll also include any relevant project maps and designs, project photos. And if you're not the landowner of the place where your project will take place, you'll include a letter from the landowner confirming that they are on board with your project. And if you mention any tribal partners, we ask that you provide a letter from them to show that they really are bought into it. And you can include any other project support letters as relevant to your project. And this is all on the website. So just a closer look at what we mean by innovative partnerships and community benefits, since that's a big part of the last area of criteria I mentioned. So for innovative partnerships, we're looking at you, the applicant, and your partnerships with CBOs, environmental nonprofits, different local governments, including tribal governments, healthcare providers, faith-based organizations, any number of creative types of organizations who could help form a community of partners to make this a successful project. And of course, we're also looking at benefits to local communities, especially economically disadvantaged communities. So looking at how different local community groups are directly involved, what their track record is within that community, how to increase the relevance of your messaging through direct outreach. We're also looking for how your project might alleviate multiple stressors in communities, like providing recreational amenities, resilience to climate change, reducing pollution burden, and all these other ways that a community can be involved. And you can see some examples of strategies for this in the Coastal Conservancy's Tips for Meaningful Community Engagement. And that's linked both in the slides on our website and in the RFP. A few examples of projects we've funded through the grant round on the smaller scale is Heron's Head Shoreline Park, Heron's Head Park Shoreline Resilience Project. This was to the Port of San Francisco, and they hired and trained local young adults in bay ecology and hands-on conservation, including native plant propagation, revegetation, and invasive plant control. And pictured here, you see the eco apprentices. They worked closely with Literacy for Environmental Justice, which is a CBO in that area. On the larger scale, we funded the Lower Walnut Creek Restoration Project. This was to Contra Costa County to restore a creekside wetland habitat by breaching levees and reintroducing the tides to formerly diked baylands. And that one is going to be providing their public access elements soon. So we're excited to see that one finish up pretty soon. Next, I'll talk about the Community Grants Program. So that was the regular grant round. That's a once a year annual calendar program. The Community Grants Program is on a rolling application. And the process for that is someone submits an application. And with that, we will schedule a consultation to provide feedback on the preliminary application. And if necessary, the applicant will provide a revised application with our feedback. And then our staff and advisory committee members will review the application. And if it's eligible and a good fit for our program, we'll provide technical assistance to get ready to bring it to our board to get the funding authorized. So a bit more about this grant program. As I said, it's a rolling application, so you can apply any time of year. It's on our website. It's a slightly shorter application. It's more like our pre-app in that way. Applicants we limit it to community-based organizations so that it's more of a it's like a low barrier to entry for organizations working closely with communities on shoreline restoration. And for that reason, it's capped at $300,000 per project. And you can find more information on our website for that. A bit more about eligibility for this grant program. We think about different kinds of projects like community visioning, led by CBOs in economically disadvantaged communities. You could do trainings for leaders to develop and apply for their own shoreline projects. you could be supporting CBOs to gain knowledge of shoreline issues or to build relationships with government agencies and nonprofits, or implementing shoreline habitat projects with strong community benefits. These would all be great examples of projects in this grant program. The prioritization criteria is the same as the major or the other grant program, the regular grant round, but we do emphasize benefiting the economically disadvantaged communities and engaging youth and young adults in these grants. The prioritization criteria, we also in this one emphasize that there are specific community benefits in the foreseeable future, so 1 to 5 years. Communities tell us, you know, these people come in and want to restore things, but then we don't see the trail for 15 years. So think about things that can happen in the near future. We like to see a well-defined community engagement process and also a sense of urgency, like why is this an important grant or project to do right now? The likelihood of success is also the same as the regular grant round. Who is the applicant? How are they scoping the project? Who are they working with? What's their plan for the site after their project's over? And similarly, you can tell us about this through your partner letters, who your partners are, how you're working with the community, and how you're benefiting EDCs. For this, again, consider the different criteria and what you can do well at for your project. And you'll submit a Word application with a schedule and budget involved, and also any maps or photos that are relevant and support letters. And the same goes for this. If you are working on someone else's land, we'd like to see a letter from them to know that that you have the green light to do work on their land. And with tribes, if you're working with tribes. An example of the community grant was to Candlestick Point Stewardship Progress Project. This was with Literacy for Environmental Justice, taking place in the Candlestick Point State Recreation Area nearby the Bayview Hunters Point neighborhood. And they planted over 6,000 native plants. They cleaned up trash in the area. They provided job training to 12 different aged youth in their Eco Apprentice program and engaged more than 300 members of the community in stewardship. And you can peruse our website for different projects we've funded, so you can see the kinds of projects we've funded before. At this point, we're at 41 projects, so quite a lot of options to look at. And that concludes our presentation. So I'm going to stop the recording and we were happy to take your questions.